Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Stromberg with the Folston Siefken Law Firm. I serve as chair of the Olathe Chamber's Legislative Committee, and it's my honor to moderate today's event. On behalf of the Johnson County Public Policy Council, a collaboration of all 10 local chambers of commerce, and in particular on behalf of today's host, the Olathe Chamber, I'd like to welcome everyone. Joining me is incumbent and House Speaker Ron Ryckman, candidate for the Kansas House District 78, which is roughly east of I-35, to and west of Flum, and north from 143rd Street to 159th Street. You can read more about his background and experience at our Public Policy Council website, www.votejoco.com. I'll briefly share the format for our interview, which will include a 2-minute opening statement from the speaker, moderated question and answer period during which he will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each question, followed at the end by a 1-minute closing statement. Today's questions, which focus on business issues, were developed by the Public Policy Council. Ron, can you provide us with a 2-minute opening statement, letting viewers learn more about you and why you are seeking re-election for District 78?
Yeah, Matthew, thank you so much for having me, and the Olathe Chamber and the other area chambers. Thanks for doing this. I grew up in Western Kansas, went to a small 2A school, was able to participate in all kinds of activities, from musicals to sports. I did get a scholarship to play basketball at Mid-American Nazarene. That's what brought me to Olathe over 30 years ago. Fell in love with the community, met my wife at Mid-America. We decided to raise our family here. We stay here for the education. We have a great education, not just our universities, but also our schools here. Went on to start a couple of different businesses, but ultimately I'm a father, I'm a husband, been a youth coach. I've been, also obviously been on the City Council of Olathe, and currently as in the House of Representatives and serve as Speaker.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Next, we're going to proceed to the question and answer portion, and just a reminder, 1.5 minutes for the responses, give or take. So question number 1, as a candidate, what are your top 3 policy issues?
I think normally economic recovery is the top, and during this time of COVID, post-COVID, it's definitely economic recovery is a number 1 priority. I think fair taxes for our families is probably number 2. And then just protecting funding for our essential services, including mental health, our schools, our nursing homes, infrastructure, law enforcement, and also foster care reform.
Thank you. How would you propose to balance the state budget? What specific budget cuts would you support, and what revenue enhancements would you consider, if any?
A few years ago, we worked hard to get our finances back in order. I remember the days as appropriations chair where, honestly, the reserves in the state of Olathe, the city of Olathe, were greater than the reserves we had for the state. We brought some tax fairness back to the system, able to have about a $900 million budget surplus. A lot of that came from an economy that was going well. And so I think first we have to continue to look at ways to grow our economy. Definitely before we look at any kind of tax increases, which we're going to not look at the House. We also need to look at this fairness for the whole system and protecting some of the core functions of the government that might have been cut in the past that we know are vital for our citizens and also vital for economic recovery.
Thank you. What would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce?
Well, I think a lot of that is workforce development. One of the bills that we passed last year in the Kansas House and had bipartisan support was the Promise Act, where basically we matched the needs of our businesses with our students in a trade school or a community college and provided a scholarship. And the only very guarantee with that was that you either go on to a 4-year school or that you would come and work for Kansas for 2 years. Unfortunately, the government did veto that, and we'll still look at that again. But definitely workforce development is a big area of need for us. I think still investing in the Job Creations Fund is important. and tort reform, especially in the middle of COVID and post-COVID. Our businesses need to be able to open safely, but also they need to be able to have the protections and not have a disincentive to get our folks back to work.
Thank you. Moving on, the next topic's near and dear to my heart. I have 4 boys at home. What are your views on funding K-12 education?
You know, I didn't mention this in my intro, but I come from a long line of educators. Both my parents are teachers. My wife's a teacher. In fact, my oldest child, my daughter, is now teaching in-person school in Colorado. My grandparents were teachers. I've got a sister who's a teacher. And so obviously schools are near to my heart. All 3 of my kids were educated here in Johnson County in our public schools. One of the concerns I have with our system is that we made promises that are not able to keep. Even the ones that most adamantly supported the last education bill, they couldn't show you how it could be funded in the out years. So we need to provide stability to our schools. We need to provide certainty to our schools. And so that's what my concern is, that we make promises we cannot keep. Obviously, we know education is vitally important in Johnson County. In fact, I remember hearing our late great Mayor Mike Copeland mention many times that education is our #1 economic driver. I 100% agree with that. And we have great education, great schools here in Johnson County and Olathe and Blue Valley, Shawnee Mission, and others. And so we need to continue that. But we also need to be fair and make sure that we're making promises that there's a way to keep.
Thank you. The next question sort of dovetails off of one of your earlier responses. What types of economic development policies will you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas?
Well, again, I kind of hit on some of them. A lot of it is, it goes to when we talked about it. You keep investing in education, not just K through 12, but also your higher ed system. You match what our business needs are with what our students are at. I think lots of times we're guilty of providing education for jobs that may not be needed anymore or is not in demand. And so that was the beauty of the Promise Act. We were actually matching the top 10 industries, things that our businesses were asking for, either if they were a grow at home type business or one that we want to attract, is making sure that you have a able-bodied, educated workforce. I think is extremely important. Like I said, we talked earlier about continuing to invest in the job creation fund and having those tools available. I think providing our locals the flexibility to continue to attract the businesses that they see fit based on what the locals have selected for their criteria is very important as well.
Now, again, you sort of hit on this again, but the next question is, what are your views on state tax policy being as specific as you can?
Well, a few years ago, we did work on bringing some tax fairness and bringing some folks back on the tax rolls, which stabilized and broadened our tax system. I was disappointed that we did pass a reduction in food sales tax. That was vetoed. Another thing that was disappointed in is we passed a property tax transparency bill that basically got us out of a lid situation to provide flexibility to our local governments, but also had them be transparent with their taxpayers. That the taxes couldn't go up just by basic property valuation. It had to be by a vote. Again, that was vetoed by our governor, and we look forward to getting back to Topeka and passing those type of things because we all know how important property taxes are to all our citizens.
The next question is involving healthcare. What are your views on healthcare policy, just generally speaking?
Well, we have to continue to find ways to lower the cost. And work with our providers and also the folks that need it most. We invested quite a bit of funds into mental health. I think that's extremely important. It was important the last 5 or 6 years, but we focused on it, but really important now, especially in the middle of COVID and this pandemic. We're seeing it inside our schools. We're seeing it in our workplace. Folks are meant to be social. Folks are meant to be out and about. And so we definitely need to continue to focus there. I believe our work we did in telehealth is vitally important to bring some of the healthcare. One, it's very safe, but also the connectivity on that has been very important.
All right, and for today's final question, What do you believe most distinguishes you from your opponent in this race?
Well, I think one would be my business experience and the ability uh, to solve problems and take a vast different viewpoints and put people in a room and have that dialogue to try to find the compromise that's needed. That's something that we've done at the business level. We've definitely done it in Topeka. Something that I learned on the Olathe City Council. Again, I was able to serve under Mayor Copeland and a bunch of great council members, and it was modeled there that you can get in a room and you can find a way to agree, do it. But if you can't, make sure you do it agreeably, and that's what we try to model, and we're proud of that.
Well, Ron, thank you for that. Now, there are no more questions left, but this is where you can come in and give us your 1-minute closing statement where you just tell us your pitch.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so much for the opportunity to spend some time with you today. We're wanting to bring as much transparency we can to the system. We continue to want to grow our economy. We want to do it safely. Again, right now, we're under our budget will be under stress that it has not seen before. We believe that having experience to navigate through that is important. Being able to pass legislation that does help this economic development, this recovery is vitally important. And we look forward to continue to serve the citizens of Olathe and the state and help guide us through these unprecedented times. And it's been an honor to do so. And I look forward to continuing in this role.
Well, that concludes our candidate interview for House District 78 featuring House Speaker Ron Ryckman. On behalf of the Olathe Chambers of Commerce and the entire Johnson County Public Policy Council, thank you for participating in today's program and providing voters with the important opportunity to hear from you. This candidate interview has been recorded and will be posted on the Public Policy Council's public nonpartisan voter website, www.votejoco.com, where you can find more information about the candidates, videos of other candidate forums and interviews, and advanced voting details. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Have a great day.